My State of the World address. Today I am suffering from over-whelm. Here in the UK we have a new Prime Minister. Every news channel is using the phrase, "One of the first items in her inbox will be..." Sadly, the items are not all the same one thing. The cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine, the state of the national health system, the multiple strikes from a massively unhappy and underpaid workforce. They all occupy the headlines. But there's many more broken Britain crises just under the surface. Tonight, nearly 8 billion of us will want our supper. The problem will not go away by breakfast the next morning. If anything, it'll be getting more acute. Unfortunately, greed stalks the land. There's a game that psychologists play. 5 people sit round a table with piles of gambling chips in front of them. One puts a chip on the table, the rest follow suit in turn, and so the game continues. Nobody knows the rules. When the next person sees what the last one did, he'll obligingly follow suit. What nobody knows is that one person is a stooge. After the game of cooperation is happily flowing, the stooge will suddenly remove all of his chips or take somebody else's chips. Chaos ensues. Society breaks. In Russia, Mr. Putin is claiming in the past something belonged to Russia and so now they want it back. This is the stooge in the game. He decided to break society, and chaos ensues. Our old friends the Vikings, from which I am no doubt descended, are a great case in point. The fertile plains of Scandinavia saw the numbers of these folk rocket in a short period of time as they organised, farmed and built their society. Eventually, this success required them to look further afield for new resources. Suddenly, everywhere was fair game for them. They even seemed to have discovered Canada long before anybody else, but they found it a little bit distasteful and left shortly afterwards. Well, the beavers heaved a huge sigh of relief, at least for another 1,000 years. It's a simple equation. The more people you have, the more they want. The more they put pressure on their leader to get it. This is also a great lie in some cases. Greed and corruption can easily be dressed up as looking after the needs of my people. We see this reflected in the gold bath taps of Saddam Hussein's many palaces or Imelda Marcos's shining shoe collection. It's very easy for leaders to have grand views and to fire off edicts and commands. It's easy for generals to fire off commands and rockets. The chain absolves everybody. The leader didn't pull the trigger. The general was only acting on orders. It strikes me that I should probably highlight a certain gentleman called Professor Klaus Schwab, who is the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum. After the pandemic, he called for the Great Reset, essentially a revolutionary way of running the world, where more of the power is handed to businesses and governments become less powerful. Well, the governments of many countries are now being run by people hand-picked by Professor Schwab anyway. The most notable past favourites being Tony Blair, Angela Merkel and even Vladimir Putin. The current crop of leaders number amongst them Emmanuel Macron of France, Carlos Alvarado Quesqueda, President of Costa Rica, Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, Alexandre De Croo, Prime Minister of Belgium, and Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, who is currently engaged in fighting the third great oil war on behalf of the United States of profitability. This great reset idea is dismissed generally as a conspiracy theory. To be fair, any question that politicians don't wish to answer is now classed as a conspiracy theory. Essentially, you are conspiring to make me tell the truth about my shady dealings, and therefore you are a conspiracy theorist. Or you have an accurate theory about my conspiracies. Many conspiracy theories commonly cite Ida Altkin's article on what a potential 2030 would look like, as well as a 2016 World Economic Forum video in which said article was presented alongside other predictions for 2030 and summarised as, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent it and it'll be delivered by a drone." It's pretty straightforward to me. Put your hands up if you feel that businesses for profit are looking after your daily needs. And all you greedy shareholders, make sure you put your hands down. The new rallying cry is now wealth before health. Key to this is the fact that Klaus Schwab is not saying we'll all have nothing and be happy, but rather you'll all have nothing and be happy. It's clear there's still a planned paternal ruling elite, but now on a global scale. And you are not invited. They have your data, they know who you voted for, what religion you are, what your sexual preference is, how your nuclear family looks, what your taste in music, books and sport is, what paper you read, what drugs you depend on, and what your snoring sounds like when you sleep. They watch you on CCTV all day, every day, and they invite you to install your own spying devices in your own home and pay for the privilege. Alexa, stop listening. But, and there is a but, there's a place you can go and a way you can be that's an antidote to it all. You guessed it. Go inside. Work in every day, not work out. Spend time in deep contemplation, and shortly you'll find that it's difficult to tell if you're watching the latest soap or the evening news. You soon come to realise that none of it actually matters at all. So many of our religions and spiritual paths have told us that it's very difficult to find the top of the mountain. The truth is that you have always been there. How can you attain something that you already have? Well, it's like a trusty pair of reading glasses. When you finally put them on, everything comes into focus at last. As you know, I think meditation is a great tool to quieten the mind and tame the escaped horses. But contemplation is the real tool. Sit quietly. Examine yourself. Ask yourself, who am I? When I speak, who speaks? When I think, who thinks? Try to experience yourself as the true self, as the grounds of all consciousness, and then have a jolly good laugh. Love, love, and more love as always.